our customer relationships improve, our investors begin to look at us with eyes of appreciation, as it were. Now, engaging on this particular subject, writing by a friend of mine, Dr. John C. Maxwell, speaks to the fact that there is no business ethics, there's just ethics. And ethics in developing suggests that we are going to be able to grow people from a base where they may not have been conscious of how their activity ripple onto others. Therefore, development also leads to growth. And if we are deliberate about this, we will take note of the fact that ethics is central to the character of leadership. And the character of leadership encompasses integrity and intent. And if the intent is to be able to build, we are going to be able to develop leaders around ourselves in ways that will ensure that our businesses grow consistently. Thank you very much.
Buyani, thanks a lot for that, those valuable comments, and thanks to the comments that we see on the chat. Juliet Fourie, thanks for agreeing with Buyani and saying that ethical leadership is the key to good leadership systems. Right.
I've lost sound altogether.
Buyani, you can't hear us. Jenny, can you hear us? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Hekkie.
Glenda, you can hear me. If from the audience or the delegates can just say, we are good. I see we're good. Thank you very much for that confirmation. I would like to pose the second question to Glenda, but before I do, I think it's so important, just leading into the question, that we need to understand who do we need to invest in, and we can't just invest in anybody. And it's important that we get that process right. And Glenda, with that background, I'd just like to ask you, how important do you think it is for the individual leader to have a lifelong commitment to self-development?
Thanks for that, Hekkie. I also want to note that I also wear a second hat, and that hat is for the ASEM Global Health Supply Chain Initiative Program Director. So if you do see different profiles, just know that. To answer your question, Hekkie, I would say very, very important. If you want to lead, you must learn. And if you want to continue to lead, you must continue to learn. As a leader, you're responsible for your people. And I think all of leaders know that. So in my opinion, creating a growth environment for the people you lead is imperative. They are dependent on you. So if you're in no shape to lead, where does that leave them? And I think that's a question that all of us as leaders need to ask ourselves. Employees get better with the first supervisor. I mean, I did. Kids get better after their parents get better. And customers after their salesperson, etc. I mean, I can give you a number of examples. And I'm not just referring to formal learning, but also informal learning as well. If you are to remain relevant in today's world and to become an effective leader, there's a requirement for more than one type of leadership skills throughout your career. The greatest obstacle to discovery isn't ignorance, right, or lack of intelligence. Sorry, it's just it's the illusion that you have knowledge and you've arrived as a leader. Therefore, I would say that it is imperative that you need to continue to develop yourself as a leader. Because if you don't, you're done growing.
So, Glenda, thanks for that. And I think, and I want to ask you, would you agree that if somebody doesn't believe in self-development, that from an organizational point of view, there's actually wasted resources to try and develop a person like that? It's not interested in being developed.
Definitely agree. And I think throughout my career, I had a number of those. There's just other people that just don't believe in self-development or don't want to be developed. But also it's your responsibility as a leader to actually assess that. I mean, there's a number of individuals that don't want to be leaders, but just because somebody's doing a good job, you decide now, okay, let me do development, let me put you in a leadership position. So it's always important to have that connection with your employees and understand what is good for them.
Glenda, thanks for that feedback, and we appreciate that. I'd like to, in a similar vein, ask Hekkie the following question, and that is, Hekkie, do you think, from past experience, does it make sense to only focus on the high potentials in an organization to develop as leaders? And if so, how would we identify these high potential individuals?
Thanks, Hekkie. Yes, from our side, historically, I've always seen in my career that you get different kinds of individuals. Some people bloom very early in their career, some people bloom a bit later. But most importantly, you only really see somebody perform to their potential if you put them in a spot where they can perform to their potential. So historically, I've always had two approaches on my side to make sure that we give people the best potential opportunity to stand out and be identified as high performance individuals in the business. And when we do identify high performance individuals, we need to always take into account that supply chain leaders aren't always just identifying that next CEO of your company. It's also identifying the different departmental heads on executive level. It's about identifying supervisors on operational level. So leaders in the supply chain is more than just that one person that's going to become the CEO. It's really identifying those individuals that will take the team on different levels and lead them to make a success of their area of their business and take responsibility and accountability of their area. So before identifying hypos or high potential individuals, I always made sure that we put people in what I refer to as a sweet spot. There's lots of research that refers to it as a flow, when a person gets into that area where he's just in a flow. So, and I refer to it as a sweet spot. So before you need to judge a person, whether he's a high-performance individual, put him in a place where it's a sweet spot. Now, a sweet spot refers to that place in your career right here at this point in time, where you take your personal circumstances, you take your business circumstances, you take the experience you've gained over the last couple of years, the training you've had, the studies you've had, your personality type. So you take all of that into account, and somewhere in the middle of all of that, there's a spot where you just operate naturally, where you enjoy what you're doing, where just things just come naturally to you. You don't feel that you stretch too much, although you need to be stretched a little bit to just go that extra mile and to create growth opportunities as well. But you're also not in a spot where you wake up in the morning and you're just bored and you're not stimulated, etc. So for me, it's always important to make sure that you get somebody into that sweet spot where he is currently. And that sweet spot also changes over time. But once somebody is in that sweet spot, you can truly give them an opportunity to perform. If they're not in the sweet spot, they're not going to perform to the level that they can actually. But once you've got them there, then they're performing. Then you can actually judge them whether they are high-performance individuals or not, whether they are potential future leaders or not. But it's unfair from us to judge people if we haven't given them a perfect spot in line with their current experience, their personality, etc., and then say they're not leaders. Then it's actually us taking away the opportunity from them to show that they are leaders. And once we identify people that they are in their sweet spot, then we can actually start looking at the performance levels, the attributes. And within that, I also always look at different attributes like, are they positive? Are they influencing the team in the right way? Are they good communicators? Are they operating in silos, or no, they're actually open for teamwork? Are they high-fivers? In other words, congratulating people as you've got small and bigger successes. So in general, you want somebody that's in that sweet spot that can prove that they're actually adding value and they are potential leaders of a business, but at the same time, they need to influence the business surroundings in a positive manner. They need to create this environment where people want to work in that area, where people are motivated to work in that area. And once you've got that, then only I believe you can actually identify who are high-performance individuals and who are not. And once you've identified them, then you can actually start with a normal HR processes. There's lots of methodologies, processes, systems out there to identify hypos in the business environment, and then also to create proper career development plans for them. But in short, it's up to us to first make sure we give all our employees the chance of actually being hypos before we decide whether they are hypos or not. And once you've got that, then we can decide that. But then we also need to be careful. We need to be sure of what we actually looking at the attributes that a hypos needs to be, and take into account the different areas of a business, the different divisions, the different levels, etc. So yeah, in short, that's my answer from that side.
Hekkie, thanks for that. And it's a privilege to have somebody on board as part of this panel that's been around for a very long time. And you've had a number of managing MD positions within the Imperial Group. And thanks for sharing with us your experience today. But it's also great, just before we carry on to the conference delegates, thank you for everything in the discussion panel. It's a lot of affirmation, Hekkie, in terms of what you said as well. The audience agreeing, and that's great. And I'd like to encourage the audience to please, or the delegates to please carry on with those comments. We appreciate that. And in your mind, there are some of the questions that's already been posted that we will address as part of the rest of the questions. But if there are any at the end that we haven't addressed, that you please keep those for the end, till the end, and we'll address those. And even after the session, if there are more questions, we would break away into different groups in the lounge, and we'll address those questions, because that's important to us. I would like to move to the skill side of leadership development, as far as the next two questions are concerned. And I would like to ask Ramatu, what do you think are the most important skills, and something that came up in the chat as well, one of the questions, what do you think are the most important skills that our leaders require in today's world of business?
Thank you, Hekkie. And this question is really, really important, considering the situation we find ourselves, the COVID times. And for us that are building leaders, I think it's very important for leaders, future leaders, current and future, to have the systems thinking. It's very important to be able to understand how the system works. Because, so for example, during COVID at the beginning, we're just hearing of coronavirus in Wuhan, and most people didn't even understand how that affects their system, and before you could say 1 or 2 weeks or 3, we started feeling the impact all over the world. So it's very important to understand how the system works. And it's also important to have a clear vision of your organizational direction in terms of having strategic thinking. Leaders also need to be very clear in making decisions, because during this period, one of the key determinants of organizations doing well is how well leaders can make decisions. And we should be able to make decisions with just enough information. You have to be able to act very quickly. We saw how supply chains that were able to make quick and strategic decisions were able to thrive more than others that were lagging behind, the laggards. Also, another critical skill is communication. Even though we have more systems in terms of softwares and platforms to communicate, but somehow we find ourselves not really communicating as well as we should in terms of organization. So this skill is very important. You have to be able to carry your team along. You have to be able to communicate effectively, especially during period of uncertainty. It's very important that everybody is on board at the same time. It could be the difference between life and death if we're very good at communication. And also, we have to provide visibility. It's important for everybody to be able to see the entire system at the same time, because there are people that are closer to the Gemba and they can easily make decisions. So transparency and also managing feedback. It's important that we manage feedback. So we had a lot of that during COVID, and we're still struggling with it. It's also important to be able to build collaborative relationships. I know people talk about this a lot, but I think a lot of organizations still don't understand the depth or the importance of having collaborative relationships. So as a leader, this skill is very important, being able to manage relationships and being able to even build new relationships across different sectors. It's very important. Now we're talking about the COVID vaccine. We have a vaccine, but we're talking about the supply chain. How do we get it to the poorest of the poor in the farthest of the regions of the world? We're talking about dry ice. How do we use our relationships to be able to get these important products, vital life savings, to people that need them? We could leverage on collaborative relationships. So a leader needs to be able to build and sustain that relationship. It's also important to have learning agility. As a leader, we find ourselves having to learn from different areas or different fields that are not relevant or we feel will not be relevant to us. So upskilling and reskilling is very important for leaders. We also have to be team players in the terms of you might find your organization having to repurpose or redesign your supply chain. It's important to co-design, co-create with other stakeholders. And leaders will have to be influential. We have to influence employees. We have to be able to convince people and be able to chart and achieve organizational goals.
Ramatu, thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. I think it's such an important topic, skills and leadership skills that we need in today's day and age, that I would love to continue the topic. But before we do, I would invite everybody to complete a poll, which was based on sound research. And if you click on the right-hand side of your screen, you will see polls. And I just want to ask Jenny to please bring our poll question up. Jenny, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, I can hear you. The poll should be live. I can see the poll.
Can you see the poll? It came up now. It's on my side. It's poll question number 2. It's not poll question number 1. It is poll question number 2. And if everybody wouldn't mind just to pick out of those 4 possibilities, which area from the following list is most critical in the leadership development process in organizations? So my screen is question number 2. And the first answer starts with alignment. And the last one ends with the leadership development process. So if you wouldn't mind just completing the poll, I'll give you 20 seconds. I know those sentences are quite lengthy, but I'll elaborate on the answers just now. I'm going to give it another 15 seconds, Jenny. So which area from the following list is most critical in the leadership development process in organizations? And if I can count us down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and please submit your final answer. And we'll get Jenny to just show us what the answers were from the delegates.
You see that? Have you got the broadcast?
I did see that. Can you maybe just tell us which one got the most votes?
Sorry, hold on. You're the first poll that we've done, in case nobody could tell.
All good. It's not a problem. I think we're all used to the technical challenges, and it's not an issue at all. Everybody can just be.
So it's a tie between the first one, the leadership development process, and the culture values.
Okay.
They're both exactly the same.
Right. So we've got to tie on those two. I'm not going to focus too much on the individual scores, but what I would like to mention to you is that when I did the PhD research, which I've completed a couple of months ago, those 5 areas were unanimously voted for or chosen by the Southern African leadership development experts that I've interviewed through a number of interviews I had with them. And those 5 areas came out as the most critical areas that are required to ensure that a leadership development process in an organization is successful. There were differences between the different levels of work, but those 5 were unanimously across all levels of work or leadership then voted or chosen or pointed out by the leadership development experts as being critical to the success of the leadership development process, which I think is quite interesting. We had a question from Raymond just on the poll results. And his question was around how do we measure leadership effectiveness in today's digital age? Raymond, I think the last question or the last point in the poll actually addresses that. And I think it's important to ensure that leaders both focus, yes, on the goal, on the objectives of the organization, that they drive those hard. But I think what would never change, even in the digital age, is the fact that we need to focus on the soft side of leadership, and that is for leaders to create a safe, productive place for people to work in, if that helps, and we can explore that further. I'm going to carry on with the question side of it, and I want to focus on the second part of the skill side. And I want to ask Ramatu, we've touched on it, but we haven't really unpacked it completely, I think. The whole thing, and especially you've mentioned COVID, the whole thing around VUCA, the ability to lead in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world of doing business and running our supply chains. Do you think that's more prevalent or more important rather than ever?
Yeah, thanks, Hekkie. VUCA aptly describes the current COVID situation that we find ourselves, and we have to develop resilient leadership to cope with the rapid and unpredictable change in the world today. And to lead in a VUCA world, a leader needs to understand the shocks that affect global supply chains and businesses and the magnitude of the impact on demand and supply. So some supply chains are more exposed to shocks than others. Say, for example, communication devices supply chain is more susceptible than medical devices supply chain. Also, leaders need to prepare for as many alternative realities as possible by implementing effective risk monitoring, mitigation strategies, and establish business continuity plans for their organizations. Also build resilient supply chains by becoming more agile and innovative. And this is very important. We have to use innovative thinking. So right now we're talking about moving COVID vaccines. People are talking about dry ice, and the dry ice supply chain is going to have a lot of disruption very quickly once these vaccines are out in the market. So it's something that we have to be able to prepare and build supply chains that will be able to help get these products to the people that need them. We have to be innovative in thinking. We also need to understand corporate culture, just as you mentioned in your polls, and how it shapes resilience by, say, creating a corporate culture which is supportive and adaptive to change and uncertainty, such as the one that fosters communication. It's very, very important that we look at the corporate culture when it comes to the VUCA world. We also need to be able to build collaborative relationships, like I mentioned earlier, develop shared purpose and vision, and the confidence to lead through uncertainty. We saw different leadership, global leadership during COVID. We saw how some leaders of countries came up and took charge and fostered that confidence in their people. Leading with confidence is very important during uncertainty. And as a leader, we have to become lifelong learner, just as mentioned by Glenda. It's important to continue to build capacity and ability to sense and respond to market, technological, economic trends, events, and even risks that are all out there. We also need to be agile and hire employees that are capable of adapting to change.
Ramatu, thanks for that. Much appreciated. Jenny, I see Buyani is not back yet. I'm going to move over to the next question for Glenda. And Glenda, the question I've got for you is, can a one-size-fits-all approach be followed where the same leadership development program or process is adopted across all levels of leadership? And why or why not?
This is a very tricky question, but I'm going to answer you. So, my opinion, everyone's unique. There's no one-size-fits-all. Definitely not. You must understand the unique perspective of everyone's experiences that shape each person. So most of leadership developments do not deal with the self, right? And different leadership styles are required and in different and often challenging business environments. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so I found that a transformational leadership style is often needed and can be very effective, which I consider myself to be. Our leadership style is of entrepreneurial activity. You also find the transactional leaders who encourage excellence via compliance and efficiency. Now, what most organizations do, they build the development programs around the latter style of leadership. And given the fluid nature of business today, as well as the increasing frequency of disruption, and companies continuously transitioning through stages of change and uncertainty. I mean, Ramatu just mentioned now VUCA, right? The bottom line is that leadership is whether the people are being led, are successful, are succeeding, and they're adding value to building a sustainable organization. So I hope I've answered your question.
You did, absolutely. So we agree that the bottom line is VUCA and the ability or the skill to be able to operate in a VUCA environment is more important.
Correct.
Lena, much appreciated. Thank you. And yeah, keep on with the chats. Thank you very much for the comments that's coming through. That's all good and adds to the discussion. Thank you. I want to ask Gerrie, in your experience, Gerrie, in a dynamic business environment, how do we ensure that our leaders stay engaged and motivated in their role?
Thanks, Hekkie. Yeah, this is probably one of those topics that I've got quite a passion for, to make sure that people are engaged. And we're really asking us, what does engage mean? So if we want our leaders to be engaged, or our future leaders to be engaged, they need to wake up in the morning and they need to enjoy what they're doing. They need to see that they're adding value. They need a proper career path, and they need to know where they're going. So that's going back to what I referred to previously as that sweet spot. We need to ensure that people are in their sweet spots of that time of their careers. And most importantly, we need to make sure that as their sweet spot change, they change with it. If a sweet spot changes and they stay behind, or they go ahead too fast, then they will be out of the sweet spot or out of that flow where things just happen, where they enjoy what we're doing, where they see they're adding value, etc. So we need to always make sure that people stay in their sweet spot. If we can get that right, we get this positive snowball effect. A snowball effect of people that everybody just adds value. Everybody works together well, and they enjoy what they're doing. They buy into the bigger strategy of business. They know where they're going. But that's saying sweet spot. But the big question is, how do we then know what is your sweet spot? When do you know when an employee is in his sweet spot or out of his sweet spot? So for that, you firstly need to spend a lot of time with your people. You need to know them. You need to understand what drives them. You need to understand where they want to go in their careers. You need to understand how their dynamics change so we can make sure they stay in their sweet spot. And sometimes we need to make sure that we also make time for individual just sessions where we can just talk, coffee chats. We need to ask for difficult questions. We need to ask our employees, are they excited in the morning when they wake up and coming to work? Do they feel they add value? Do they feel they get recognition for their successes? Do they actually have successes according to them? If we don't ask those questions, we won't know how the employees feel. We'll make our own assumptions, and a lot of times when we make our own assumptions, it's based on the 5 minutes a week that you actually see them face to face. And a lot of the times that's a very small portion of the true reflection of where they are in their careers and where they are in their day-to-day adding value and how they feel. So we need to make time for our employees. We need to ask all the different difficult questions, but then we also need to be realistic. Once we actually understand where our employees are, we need to map that over the company's HR strategy. Where are we going? How are we tackling the career development? What templates are we using? What methodologies are we using? And most importantly, we need to make sure that we then take all of that information and create a proper career development plan for our employees. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we are open and honest. We can't create unrealistic expectations. Not everybody can become a director or MD or CEO of a business. And we need to make sure that we create realistic expectations with realistic timelines and programs to get them there. And as we do that, our employees will start understanding that we really care about their career development and where they're going in a specific company. And if all of that is in place, we'll keep people engaged. If one or some of this is missing, we won't have people engaged. And over time, it actually creates the negative snowball effect, where people don't enjoy waking up in the morning and coming to work, where they don't see what value they're adding, and you don't want to be on that side. You want to be on the side where it's a positive snowball. But it's a process. It's a process that a manager also has to make sure that he's got the passion inside to drive his staff's career development plans, and to truly sit with them and understand where they want to go, but look at realistic short, medium, and long-term results. Okay.
I can't agree with you more, Gerry. Thanks a lot. I mean, if our leaders aren't engaged and motivated, then I think we've lost the proverbial battle. Jenny, am I right? We're battling to get Buyani back on?
Yeah, I've just had a message that unfortunately he just cannot hear any of us. So they're battling to try and fix him, but I don't think he's going to be back before.
It's not a problem at all. I wanted to ask Buyani, but I want to throw it open to the panel. The question, because I think it's important that we discuss it, also in terms of involving the delegates, and that is the whole issue around driving and believing in diversity and inclusion. Ramatu, if I can maybe put you on the spot and ask you to answer this one from us all the way from Nigeria. If I can maybe just lead in to that. Last week I was in the car with a friend of mine, William. He's from Malawi, and he tells me that in Malawi they also speak 11 languages. Yesterday I was watching one of my favorite sports being MotoGP, and the guy from KTM, who's the boss, Pit Buyer, he's a paraplegic. And then I just realized that there's so many different aspects to diversity and inclusion, and that we obviously need to embrace this. And it's not a localized thing again. It's a global thing. So if I can ask you, Ramatu, the question, maybe in Buyani's absence, how important do you think is it that our leaders actively drive and believe in diversity and inclusion?
That's a very important question, and diversity and inclusion is very critical for survival of companies and organizations. And people have different views about diversity. You talked about languages. I think we have over 250 languages in Nigeria, very diverse. And you can also, people look at it from the point of gender, and so many different points of looking at it, be it socioeconomic status or social cultural status of people. So, but that's very, very important for me in terms of business. So, for example, I can tell you that when I started working, I was the only female on my management team. And it was very difficult just to work in all-male team and having to lead this group of people. I was also the youngest, which was also another problem. So it's very important to have diverse ways of thinking in an organization, because bringing in that diversity enriches the organization. And I think there's also been a lot of research that also shows that diversity also brings in more money. There's the bottom line also increases. So there's a lot of incentive for leaders to embrace diversity in their organizations. It helps in solving complex problems because we all have different ways of looking at things. Having a variety of people, the young, the females, even the vulnerable, being there to take a look at problems and also profile solution can be the difference between solving a problem and not solving it at all. So diversity is very important in all businesses, and leaders need to begin to embrace it. We also need to begin to set up diversity programs more actively. It's not very common in Nigeria, but it's something that people are now becoming more aware of. We are talking about it, and people are beginning to see that it's really a problem that needs the attention of leaders.
That's great, and I appreciate that feedback, and I think we're all in agreement. We can't agree with you more. I would like to, on my clock, we've got 5 minutes left. I'd like to address one or two questions from the conference delegates. And one question we had was just elaborating on, and I just want to take my slider down. Omar, you asked, can you elaborate on challenges and opportunities when leadership development is focused on cloning or replicating current leader profiles? I would like the panel to please come in here. If I can maybe kick off by saying, I think we all leaders should have enough knowledge about what does leadership development entail. We should all have the required level of EQ to have crucial conversations around the fact that we can't clone one specific leader, because one specific leader, there's no perfect leader. Yes, we can try and replicate good characteristics or skills, etc., from one leader and combine it with the same from another leader. But I would think that there needs to be a discussion around the fact that to clone one specific leader in the long term won't be successful. Are there any of the panel members that would like to add to that?
Sure, if I can, Hekkie. Thank you very much. Amongst the joys that we've had at the start of 2020 was just the appreciation of the fact that for once, we actually find ourselves operating with a minimum of 5 generations in the workplace. And the backgrounds each carry can enrich the way decisions are made inside the organization, but more importantly, help the organization to be able to grow. When you care to think about the fact that the majority of the people who are in senior leadership right now tend to be people from what is regarded as the baby boomer generation, nearing their retirement right now. The visionary approach that was at the advent of the baby boomer generation had an impact on what happened with the Gen X's. And the Gen X's became highly cautious in terms of what was going on because of their various scandals that took place. Incidentally, that's repeating itself now as Generation Alpha is being born. When you get to think about it, many of the Generation Zs, who are people who were born in the year 2000 and are active entering in the workplace right now, they are noticing what's happening from the leaders who are scandal prone and asking questions. Should I really be joining this organization? Should I be giving the best of myself to this organization? While at the same time, with appropriate mentorship and coaching, they could actually be rerouted into what the Gen Ys have been able to observe in their engagement in the workplace. Because of the fact that they have almost been required to find things for themselves, growing up in an environment of technology all over and everything being done in a manner that required them to be able to be creators of content, creators of organization, rebuild organizations, particularly post 9/11, 2001. All of this, all that has come through has been a requirement for leadership to come forth and be truthful. Therefore, diversity in the inclusion of all of the generations, particularly from Boomer to X to Y to Z, and then to Alpha that's coming up. We are going to enrich our organizations when we work on the strengths that each of the generations carries. When we work on the strengths and not spend too much time being judgmental towards what other generations seem to be about, we're going to be able to go much further. Insight is what is most needed. And insight helps us to be able to build better foresight as we build our market rebound coming through from the challenges or brought about by COVID-19. And as we look into that rebound, we're also looking into how we restart in about 38 days' time when 2021 begins. And it is vital for us to be deliberate about ensuring not just diversity, but inclusion. As you heard from Ramatu, her being included into the decision-making process is what enriched the organization that she's a part of. Thank you.
I would like to close off. We're unfortunately out of time. I think we all would agree that there's lots more to talk about and there's lots more to do as far as developing our supply chain leaders are concerned. I would just like to say in conclusion, a warm thank you to all our conference delegates. Thanks for all the chats and the comments. Thank you to the team, the panel, if you wouldn't mind just switching your videos back on. And I would like to invite the conference delegates to please join us afterwards. I think we've got a lunch break now as well, to maybe join us at different tables to field more questions and have more proper discussions around the topic. We would love to share with you some ideas with you as the conference delegates. If I can please ask that in the lounge on your left-hand side, you'll see you can click there, not now, but when we're done. Ramatu, if you can go to table 46, Buyani to 47, Glenda to 48, Hekkie to 49, and I'll be at table 50. And I would like to thank everybody, and we trust and hope that was useful. Enjoy the conference, and let's like say in conclusion, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes our session. See you in the lounge.
Thanks, Hekkie. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, bye everyone.
What table were you going to? Oh, she's gone.